Okay, we are actually going to be entering this church. This church is called the Church of Saint Peter in Galli-cantu. Gallio is what? Manok, rooster. And then cantu is the crowing. The crowing. The crowing of the rooster at the Last Supper. At the Last Supper, Jesus said to his disciples, "You will all abandon me. You will all abandon me. You will all desert me. And you will be like sheep without a shepherd, because they will strike the shepherd," meaning himself. And so when Jesus said, "You will all abandon me," here's Peter. Confident of himself, he says, "Not me, Lord. Maybe they. Maybe they would desert you. But not me, Lord. I will never abandon you." That's what Peter said. But Jesus knew the heart of Peter. And Jesus said to Peter, "Peter, before the cock crows today, you shall deny me 3 times." Okay, so we are about to enter the church, the place where Peter denied the Lord 3 times, the house of Caiaphas. We're right now at the middle church. And if you look around, we have the stone from the outside. Can you see it? All this is a natural stone from the mountain itself. During the time of Jesus, this would have been an outside courtyard. So Peter was here at this courtyard. So Jesus, in the meantime, was being tried upstairs by the Sanhedrin, by the Jewish court. And while he was being tried right there at the upstairs at the Jewish court, Peter was here. And it says in the Bible that he was warming himself over coals of fire. And then somebody recognized him and said, "Surely you were with Jesus." And we see here Peter, and what did he say? "I do not know the man." And then another servant girl says, "For sure you are a Galilean, because we recognize you by your accent." And what is the Galilean accent? It's Aramaic. The first language of Jesus is not Hebrew, but it is Aramaic. The Galilean Jews used to speak in Aramaic. And so Jesus' first language was Aramaic. Now let me ask you something. If I pinch you, a Visayan, what do you say? Ayay o agoy? Agay? Okay. And if it's a Tagalog, you say? Aray. And if you are an American, you say? Ouch. So when you are caught by surprise, you speak the language that's closest to you. And also when you are most troubled, you speak in your native language, not in the second language, right? And Jesus' first language was actually Aramaic. Let me ask you a question. When was the most painful moment in the life of Jesus? When he was crucified with us. When was the most painful moment? When he was denied, that's painful. But when is the most painful moment? There is one most painful moment in the life of the Lord. That is when he was hanging on the cross and he felt the total absence of the Father. Jesus can endure anything as long as he felt the presence of the Father with him. He never experienced in his whole life the total separation from the Father or the total absence of the Father. You see, when he saw that all his friends deserted him, he still felt the presence of the Father with him. When they were mocking him and spitting on him and putting the crown of thorns on him, he still felt the presence of the Father with him. And so when they were nailing him to the cross, he still felt the presence of the Father with him. He can endure anything as long as he felt the presence of the Father. But there's one moment in the cross that he felt the total absence of the Father, total absence of the Father. And he cried out in Aramaic, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? And soon after, he died. It is finished. And then he died. And so that's the most painful moment of the Lord. I would say total absence of God is hell. The total absence, a total separation from God is hell. And he tasted hell for us. For if we are totally separated from God, then we would have been in hell. Total absence of God is hell. He tasted hell for us. And so here in this particular place, Peter denied the Lord and he said, I do not know the man. 3 times. And after the 3rd time, he heard the cock crowed. And then he remembered what Jesus said at the Last Supper, that before the cock crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And then he went out. And he wept bitterly. And so here we see Peter being sorry for what he had done. And he wept bitterly. This is actually the story of Peter is also our story. Sometimes we offend the Lord. Sometimes we sin and we fall. Just like Peter. Because sometimes we could become very confident of ourselves. And we do things that are offensive that would offend the Lord. But Peter wept bitterly, and just as we repent, we turn back to God. And this is not the end of the story. There's a continuation. That after, at the primacy of Peter, remember this, right by the Sea of Galilee, Jesus restored Peter back to himself. Just as he always restores us back to himself, we should never despair when we sin. Because all we have to do is to return back to him, and he is ready to forgive us. And here Jesus looked beyond the act, but he sees what is in the heart of Peter and asked Peter 3 times, Peter, do you love me? And that was when he was restored right at the primacy of Peter, right by the Sea of Galilee.